Hello, namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Israel is witnessing mass protests. Thousands of people are out on the streets. They're angry with their prime minister after 6 more Israeli hostages were found dead in Gaza. The people say he's putting his political survival above the lives of citizens. The US, meanwhile, is finalizing a ceasefire deal. Will Netanyahu take it? We'll discuss. In Brazil, X has been banned after Elon Musk picked a battle with the country's Supreme Court. He says he's fighting for free speech. We'd like to see him do that in China, where Tesla has big business interests. In Pakistan, an ultimatum from Iran: build your side of the gas pipeline or pay $18 billion in fine. Also in Pakistan, how a dream mall's opening turned into a nightmare. China's boat war is escalating. It is ramming vessels into Filipino ships. We'll tell you why. In Germany, a far-right party has won an election for the first time since the Second World War. We'll tell you why this is a big deal. In Kolkata and Kerala, politics hijacks the issue of women's safety. The famous Russian spy whale called Vladimir has been found dead. What is dynamic pricing and why is it being debated? Was there secret life before the Big Bang? We'll tell you what the latest theory says. And what's with the flood of crocodile jokes? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. In India, floods wreak havoc in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. At least 30 people have died across 2 states. Nearly 500,000 people affected in Andhra Pradesh alone. The state's capital region has been hit by its heaviest rainfall in 50 years. Ukraine downs 22 Russian missiles fired towards Kiev. Loud explosions heard in the Ukrainian capital. This comes as Russia continues to advance in East Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Kiev's incursion into Kursk won't deter Moscow. Azerbaijan's ruling party wins the snap parliamentary election, but the opposition is crying foul. President Ilham Aliyev has ruled over the oil and gas-rich country for over 2 decades. International observers say no election held under President Aliyev has been free or fair. China rolls out the red carpet for leaders from Africa. Beijing is hosting the China-Africa Forum this week. It will be Beijing's biggest diplomatic event since the COVID pandemic. China wants to deepen its ties with the resource-rich continent of Africa. Beijing is Africa's largest trading partner. And Sweden tells parents that toddlers should not be allowed to watch screens at all, asking parents to keep children under the age of 2 away from digital media and television. The Swedish government is also mulling a ban on smartphones in primary schools.
We are just waited for so many days.
Israel, as you can see, is up in arms. The people are angry and out on the streets because of the news they got over the weekend. 6 more Israeli hostages found dead in Gaza. For many Israeli citizens, these deaths were a tipping point. So they stepped out of their homes in the thousands to protest against their government. Most of these people are blaming one man for the hostage deaths, their Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. There is widespread anger against him, and his security forces are facing the brunt of it. These clashes happened last night. Crowds broke through police lines. They blocked a major highway. Some protesters set fires on the road. Among them were families of the hostages. For months, they have been criticizing Prime Minister Netanyahu, accusing him of ignoring the safety of hostages and prioritizing his political survival.
We are here to protest against the Israeli government that is making wrong decisions. This government, because of political reasons and for the right extreme coalition of Netanyahu, is breaking those values, and this is the core of the existence of our country. No values, no country. That's why we're here, to save the country, to bring back the hostages.
I think we have a criminal government who lets the hostages be murdered only for the sake of the coalition, and we have a prime minister who doesn't think of the good of a country but only of his.
The protests continued today as well. Workers and trade unions went on a strike. So government and municipal offices, private schools, businesses, even the Ben Gurion airport in Tel Aviv were all shut today. Doctors too joined the strike. They walked out of duty.
We are striking. It's a very hard word for physicians who are here to take care for the life and the well-being of our patient. But we are in a very, very hard situation now, we and all the country, because of the hostages. We can't stand aside, and that's why we came into a strike.
In Tel Aviv, a huge crowd gathered outside the Defense Ministry. All these protesters have two demands: a ceasefire deal in Gaza and the return of all remaining hostages. That is what they want. Crowds also gathered at the funeral of one of the hostages who died in Gaza. The strike was supposed to end at 6 p.m. local time, but Israel's labor court intervened. That's because the government moved court. It filed an injunction against the strike, and the court termed the strike as political. It ordered the unions to end the strike in the afternoon, but this order applied only to the union workers. It was just for them. Thousands of other Israeli citizens were still out on the streets from all walks of life, voicing the same demand: get the hostages back. In some places, there were fresh clashes today. So how many hostages are still there in Gaza now? An exact figure is not available. More than 200 people were captured in October last year. That's when Hamas attacked Israel on October 7. They took more than 200 hostages. Some were returned. A lot of them died. Reports say 97 hostages still remain unaccounted for. And it's hard to get an accurate number now because the fighting is still on. It continues despite the protests. Israel is still pounding Gaza. Today they targeted a school. It was being used as a shelter for displaced Palestinians. The Israeli forces struck it. At least 11 people were killed. These military actions are becoming harder to justify for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, especially after what happened over the weekend. Israeli forces were on a mission. They were searching for hostages in southern Gaza. During this operation, they found the dead bodies. These 6 hostages were already dead before the Israeli forces arrived. As usual, a bitter blame game followed. Israel says Hamas killed these 6 hostages. Hamas says Israeli gunfire killed them. An American citizen was among the victims. His name is Hirsch Goldberg Polin. He had dual citizenship of Israel and the US. His death has prompted reactions from Washington, D.C. President Joe Biden issued a statement. It said, Hamas will pay for this. At the same time, the US is working on a deal. The Americans have been talking to Egypt and Qatar. Together, they are crafting a new ceasefire deal, a take it or leave it offer for Israel. And what will be the terms of this deal? A ceasefire in Gaza and an exchange proposal. Hamas could be asked to release the remaining hostages they took from Israel. In return, Israel will have to give up Palestinian prisoners. Now, for months, both sides have been going back and forth over this. But now the US hopes that mounting public pressure will force Netanyahu to accept this time. It's not a given, though. Netanyahu is yet to commit. He has called today's strike shameful. That's the word he used. He says the protest will strengthen the hand of Hamas. You see, this war has killed more than 40,000 Palestinians. But it's the death of 6 Israeli hostages that may finally force Netanyahu's hand, which says a lot about how human life is valued in this conflict. Brazil has banned X. It's a sort of decision that would make the front page, but in most places it hasn't, because the ban was largely expected. You see, Elon Musk had picked a fight in Brazil. His target, a judge of the Brazilian Supreme Court. The judge asked X to block certain accounts on the platform, most of them linked to far-right parties. These accounts were accused of spreading fake news. So the Brazilian Supreme Court told X to block these accounts. But Elon Musk refused. He resorted to personal attacks on the judge. He compared the judge to Darth Vader, even called him an unelected dictator. That was his first mistake. The second mistake came last week. Brazilian laws require social media companies to appoint a legal representative. Again, Elon Musk refused. So the court had no choice, really. It has asked Apple and Google to remove X from their app stores. Of course, you can still use VPN, but if you're caught on X using VPN, the fine is stiff, around $8,000 per day. So X has effectively been banned in Brazil. Now, this issue can be polarizing. A ban is rarely the answer to any problem, especially when free speech is involved. But Elon Musk is also responsible for what has happened. Maybe he finds the judgment unfair, in which case he can always use legal means. He can disagree and still respect the law of the land. Well, that's what normal businesses would do, but not Elon Musk. He chooses to insult and abuse office bearers. Look at his latest post. Musk says the Supreme Court judge meddled in Brazil's last election. Has he offered any evidence? Of course not. Instead, he's asking followers with evidence to reply to his post. Now, it's childish. It is dangerous, but it's not unprecedented. Elon Musk has made a habit out of this. In Australia, he sparred with the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. In the UK, he sparred with Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He said a civil war is inevitable in the UK. Now, do you see the problem here? Musk is not just a normal X user. He's the richest person on the planet, also the most followed account on X. He's got 196 million followers, so his words and tweets carry weight. But Musk is not using that power wisely. He's still using it to bully and fight foreign governments. It's a sign of how far X has fallen. Elon Musk bought the platform for $44 billion. Today, it's worth around half of that. So nearly $22 billion wiped out. Same with advertisers. Out of the top 1,000, half have left X. Out of the top 1,000 advertisers, half of them have left X. The reason? Elon Musk. He was asked about advertisers leaving the platform, and his response was to abuse them. Musk has fired nearly 80% of all ex-employees. That includes content regulation teams as well, the guys who filter out hate and fake news. As a result, X is more toxic now. And advertising companies had a problem with this. They said their ads were being displayed alongside neo-Nazi tweets. So what did they do? Well, they pulled out. Now, all of this makes one thing pretty clear, that Elon Musk is running X into the ground. And he's now lost a key market. Brazil had around 24 million X users. It was the fourth biggest market for the company. And that market disappeared overnight, all thanks to Elon Musk and his refusal to play by the rules. Now, I know Elon fanboys won't like this. They think he's God or something. But do remember this. You may like his brash attitude when he's on your side, but he won't always be. He can always turn his attention to your country or your political group. And when he does that, you will think differently. Of course, there are exceptions here. Have you ever heard Elon Musk criticize China or Saudi Arabia? Chances are you haven't, because he hasn't done it. China is the biggest electric vehicle market in the world. They make more than half of Elon's Teslas. So he's mum on Beijing. In fact, he pushes Chinese agenda and propaganda. Last year, he said Taiwan is an integral part of China. Same with Saudi Arabia. Riyadh used to own around 5% of Tesla. A Saudi prince was also part of his takeover of X. So clearly, Elon Musk's free speech advocacy has a red line, and that red line is money. I know we've only talked about X, but these problems apply to most American social media giants. They still don't respect local laws. When other platforms do it, they get punished. But when American platforms do it, they get away. Just look at Telegram. Its CEO was arrested by France last week. Why? Because Telegram was used by organized crime groups. Same with TikTok. Western countries have curbed its use. They say TikTok is working for the Chinese regime, which is a fair point. But where is the action against X or Instagram or Facebook? Facebook was implicated in the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar. The platform, Facebook, amplified anti-Rohingya hate. Was Mark Zuckerberg arrested for that? No, he wasn't. No one batted an eyelid. Same with child abuse. Around 100,000 children were sexually harassed on Facebook and Instagram in 2021. Did Mark Zuckerberg face any consequences? Well, he was grilled by the US Senate, but after that, nothing happened. It tells you about the double standard. US social media companies are subservient at home, but they're rogue abroad. They ignore hateful content, they pick fights with governments, and they refuse to follow local laws. So to all the Elon bros out there, we have just one thing to say to you. Don't let American corporations decide your free speech. You have laws and courts to do exactly that. Now, Pakistan desperately needs funds. It is on the hook for billions, and the bills are piling up. You could say none of this is news. This has been the Pakistan story for a while now. What's new is this. They have a new payment to make, a demand from Iran, more like an ultimatum. You see, Pakistan had a deal with Iran. They've committed to building a gas pipeline, but they haven't built it yet. And Iran is done waiting. The Iranians say either complete the project or pay a penalty, a whopping $18 billion. That's what Iran wants Pakistan to pay, $18 billion. Obviously, Pakistan does not have that kind of money. So can they finish the project? Like I said, it's a gas pipeline. The deal was signed way back in 2010. Pakistan and Iran called it the peace pipeline. It was supposed to run from the Iranian border to Pakistan's Gwadar port. That's a distance of over 1,900 kilometers. More than 1,100 kilometers of this pipeline were supposed to be on the Iranian side and more than 700 kilometers in Pakistan. And it would have been a boon for Islamabad. Their country would have benefited immensely from the project. It would have boosted their energy security. The pipeline was supposed to supply up to 1 billion cubic feet of gas per day. This volume of gas can power up to 30 million homes a day. Now, the tenure of this pact was 25 years. 14 of those years are already over, and Pakistan is still sitting on it. It is yet to build the pipeline. Iran has done its bit though. Their side of the project is done. They're ready to export the gas. And they've invested heavily in this pipeline, at least $2 billion so far. That's what Iran has invested. But Pakistan has not delivered on its part. It hasn't even completed the groundwork. The pipeline, like I told you, was supposed to be built in Gwadar. According to the Pakistani press, they're yet to acquire the land for this project. Now, you may ask why. Why is Islamabad dragging its feet? Well, they blame all of it on US sanctions. And for a change, they may have a point. The US has placed sanctions on Iran over the Iranian nuclear program. It has kept Iran out of the international banking system. So if Pakistan imports energy from Iran, if Pakistan buys gas from Iran, it will end up violating American sanctions. What's worse, it could be slapped with American sanctions. Needless to say, Pakistan cannot afford that and they will not risk it. But this is not the only reason they've been lagging behind. Pakistan has made multiple flip-flops on this matter. In the month of March this year, they said they don't need a waiver, that Pakistan does not need a waiver from the US to construct the pipeline. That's what their foreign ministry said. But within a few days, they changed their tune. Pakistan's petroleum minister said they would seek a waiver for the project after all. In fact, he said, and I'm quoting, they would plead Pakistan's case vigorously. These flip-flops seem to have upset Iran. In 2014, they had granted a 10-year extension to Pakistan. That extension will expire this month. So now Iran has sent a final notice to Islamabad. Their message is quite simple. Build the pipeline or we'll see you in court. And what happens if Pakistan does not comply? Well, Iran could move the International Court of Arbitration. The court could impose penalties on Pakistan. If Pakistan loses this case, they could be asked to pay up to $18 billion. This is money that Islamabad does not have, $18 billion. It was bailed out by the IMF earlier this year, remember? It's the International Monetary Fund, the lender of last resort. And that bailout was not enough. So Pakistan is lobbying with the IMF again for a larger and longer bailout. Although that wouldn't stop Iran from seeking damages. Pakistan is also a repeat offender. In 2019, an Australian mining company took Pakistan to court over an exploration contract. The company had invested in a copper mining project. The International Court of Arbitration heard the case. They found Pakistan guilty. They imposed a fine of $6 billion. Pakistan later settled the case out of court, and they still ended up paying $1 billion to the Australian company. Pakistan also has energy bills to pay. It owes some $15 billion to Chinese companies. Those bills are still unpaid, those power bills to China. Again, Islamabad does not have the money to settle them. In July, it reached out to China with a request. It wants this debt to be restructured. What does that tell you? If the Chinese can't get Pakistan to pay, we say good luck to Iran. The peace pipeline should serve as a cautionary tale. Pakistan is a serial defaulter and it is broke. Iran's pipeline looks like a pipe dream. And staying with Pakistan, let's tell you about what was supposed to be Pakistan's biggest thrift store, the Dream Bazaar in Karachi. It opened around 3 p.m. local time, and within half an hour, the mall was empty. The goods were all gone. Now, you'd imagine the opening was a super hit. But then again, this is Pakistan. The mall was empty because of an out-of-control mob that looted it. They vandalized it. They broke the glasses, beat up the security personnel, and took all the goods home. How did Karachi's dream turn into such a nightmare? Our next report tells you.
अबे तो वो है टी-शर्टें चलो यहाँ पे आगे चलो टी-शर्ट चलो
देखिए क्या हाल किया है
It was supposed to be a grand opening, yet it turned into absolute chaos. This is Dream Bazaar. It's located in the city of Karachi in Pakistan. According to reports, it was established by a Pakistani businessman living abroad. The mall was marketed as Pakistan's first mega thrift store, and the promises were lofty. Apparently, you could buy anything for as less as 50 Pakistani rupees. That's around 18 cents. The opening day was on Friday. The store announced special discounts. There were aggressive marketing campaigns. It was set to be a grand affair. Dream Bazaar opened at around 3 p.m. local time, but by 3:30 p.m. it was completely looted. Thousands gathered outside the mall ahead of the opening. When the gates opened, they rushed in. The crowd swelled every minute. The mall management tried to keep things under control, but soon it was impossible. And things descended into chaos. People looted the entire store. They took whatever they saw. Some carried them out in their arms, while others brought bags to stuff goods and carry them home. Meanwhile, the security there was overwhelmed. The crowd overpowered them. They beat up the security personnel, glasses were shattered, the property was destroyed. Some people even filmed themselves while vandalizing the store. Outside the mall, things came to a standstill. Traffic stopped and people gathered. But where were the police? Well, they were nowhere to be seen. Some allege the police ignored the looters and were beating up bystanders instead. Of course, the incident has since divided Pakistani social media. Some called it a banana republic. Others lamented the lack of rules or ethics. But more importantly, it's a commentary on the country itself and its economy. Take Karachi, for example. It's where the mall is located. Karachi accounts for 25% of Pakistan's GDP. It generates 50% of the country's revenue. Yet, development projects in the city are missing. The government slashed the budget for that. So, what's the government doing about it? Well, it's touting its own record. A few days ago, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif spoke on the economy. He said the country is moving towards stability. Yet the numbers don't look good. Debt has soared to $254 billion. This comes as Pakistan is anxiously awaiting a $7 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund. Meanwhile, the people of Pakistan are struggling. Inflation is still high, things remain unaffordable, and the angst is palpable. The looting and vandalism in Karachi reflected this. The mall may have started out as a dream project, but Pakistan's Dream Bazaar turned out to be a big nightmare.
Now let's turn our attention to Southeast Asia. A clash took place over the weekend, a maritime clash between the Philippines and China in the West Philippine Sea. That's the part of the sea that belongs to the Philippines. Therefore, it's called the West Philippine Sea. But China claims the entire region as its own, and it tries to enforce these fantasies with aggression. On Saturday, this happened again. Multiple Chinese ships ganged up on a Philippine Coast Guard vessel. Then one of the Chinese boats rammed into it. Thrice. Take a look. Sailors on board the Filipino vessel recorded the attack. They say that the Chinese ship deliberately rammed into them. And that's certainly what it looks like. The Filipino ship was damaged. There are now holes in the ship's hull. You can see the aftermath. But despite this visual evidence, China is trying to turn this around. Beijing claims to be the real victim of the clash. They released their own video of the incident taken by someone on board the Chinese vessel. This video shows just one of the 3 ramming incidents. And Beijing is trying to portray it as an aggressive maneuver by the Philippines. Today, a Chinese spokesperson doubled down on this claim.
First of all, the Sabina Shoal is part of China's Nansha Islands. On August 31st, a Philippine Coast Guard vessel had illegally stayed in the waters near Sabina Shoal for a long time. In an unprofessional and dangerous way, it deliberately rammed into a Chinese Coast Guard vessel, defending what is its rightful position. This caused a collision between the vessels from both the Chinese and Filipino sides. It is, therefore, justifiable that China takes necessary measures in accordance with the law, which is legitimate, lawful, and beyond reproach.
You've seen both the videos, both the versions, the Chinese and the Filipino one. I'll let you decide who looks like the aggressor. Meanwhile, let's look at the bigger picture here. This was the 5th clash between China and the Philippines in a month, the 5th clash in 1 month. Chinese ships and planes constantly butt heads with Filipino vessels, hoping to take hold of the disputed region by force. So let's understand the situation a bit better. First, why is this area disputed? Let's show you the map. This is where the Sabina Shoal is located. It's about 230 kilometers away from Palawan, one of the islands that make up the Philippines. Now, according to international maritime law, anything up to 370 kilometers away from the coast falls into a country's exclusive economic zone, EEZ. Anything that's 370 kilometers away from the land border is your EEZ. The Sabina Shoal is 230 kilometers away from the Philippines, so it is well within its territory. Then why does China have ships in the area? Why is it clashing with the Philippines over this island? Well, because it's China. China believes itself to be above international law. It keeps spewing bogus territorial claims based on ancient imperial boundaries using these convenient old maps. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea region. It draws this infamous 9-dash line, and it claims everything within this 9-dash line. Obviously, that is bogus. An international tribunal said as much. It ruled against the Chinese claims back in 2016. So the dispute should have been over, but China refused to accept the verdict. It continues to harass countries that should actually control the region. And that is why a dispute still exists. Now let's look at the reason behind all of this. Why does China want this area so badly? Why does it want to control the entire South China Sea region? The simple answer is resources. The entire sea is rich in oil and gas. New deposits keep getting discovered. It should be enough to benefit all the countries in the region, but China wants to hoard all of it. And it's not just oil and gas, you also have fish. The South China Sea region is full of marine life. It's a boon for a nation's food security. But again, China wants to hog it all. It keeps sending its trawlers to exploit the region, even areas in the exclusive economic zones or EEZ of other nations. So China is literally stealing food off Filipino plates. That's one reason why it wants to control the South China Sea, for the resources. The second reason is trade. About $3 trillion worth of trade flows through the region every year. $3 trillion. It's more than the GDP of most countries. And then there's the strategic angle. Remember, Beijing views the South China Sea region as its own, as its mythical, historical territory. So it wants to control the region to the T. China has set up a number of military bases and airstrips all over the sea, which it can use to exert pressure on other nations and counter any challengers. So the region is lucrative and it has military value. No wonder Beijing goes to such lengths to exert control. Our next story is from Germany. An election took place there yesterday in two German states, Saxony and Thuringia. Now, these were state-level elections. They won't change the country's top leadership, but the results made global headlines. because an unlikely force ended up the winner, a far-right party called Alternative for Germany, or AfD. That's the party, AfD. It won the state of Thuringia and it came second, a very close second, in Saxony. And this seems to have alarmed the world because it's a first since the Second World War, the first time since the Second World War that a far-right party has won elections in Germany. The last far-right party to do so was the Nazi party. Yes, those Nazis. So you can understand the discomfort. And you can decide for yourself if it is warranted. Here's the co-leader of the AfD giving a glimpse of the party's politics.
Our school classes are being flooded with children and young people from foreign cultures who come from archaic backgrounds, marked by Muslim beliefs. They are uneducated and all they speak is gibberish. Children no longer learn anything. And this is the result as to why those young people who still want to have a perspective in our country have supported the AfD as much as they have.
As you can see, the AfD takes a hard line on immigration. They don't want any foreigners in Germany. Now, being against illegal immigration is one thing, but the AfD's rhetoric has raised concerns. They've been branded, and I'm quoting, they've been branded as suspected extremists. The German courts have given the party that status, suspected extremists. But people still voted for them. The AfD emerged as the biggest party in the state of Thuringia. It won almost 33% of the vote. In neighboring Saxony, the AfD came a close second. It polled at over 30%, but narrowly lost out to the Christian Democratic Union, who won about 32% of the vote. Now let's look at what this really means. First, will the AfD govern any of these states? Most likely no. You see, no party has won an outright majority in these two states. They will have to form a coalition government, and all the other political parties have refused to work with the AfD. They have closed ranks to keep the AfD out.
For us, it is still the case, as we said before the election. We will not govern or form a government with the AfD.
I am available to form a government that has a Democratic majority. And I have always made it clear throughout the election campaigns that I am not fighting against the CDU. I am not fighting against the BSW. I am not fighting against the other Democratic parties. I am fighting against the normalization of fascism.
So the AfD may not get a chance to govern, not yet anyway, but they aren't powerless either. In Thuringia, at least, they have the power to veto certain decisions, like the appointment of judges and security officials. So the party will have a say in governance. Now to the second big question. How did a far-right party get so powerful in Germany? After the Second World War, Germany rejected far-right politics. Most Germans were ashamed of the Nazi atrocities, so they distanced themselves from that brand of politics. But the far right got a shot in the arm in 2015 thanks to former Chancellor Angela Merkel. She allowed more than 1 million refugees to move to Germany. Most of these people were fleeing the civil war in Syria. It was a kind gesture on her part, but it seems she underestimated the repercussions. 1 million foreigners moving in led to friction, especially in the East German states, which are poorer than those in the West. There was already a scarcity of economic opportunities here. And now the locals had to compete with foreigners as well. It worsened their economic situation. Add to this the cultural friction, the religious friction, and you have the perfect storm. The AfD tapped into the anti-immigrant sentiment, and they've been getting more popular since then. So Merkel's immigration policies helped propel the rise of the German far right. And her successor, Olaf Scholz, is facing the heat. Germany goes to polls next year. The state elections were like a trial run, and the results will give Scholz sleepless nights. So far, he has barely managed to keep the AfD from taking power, but who knows what will happen in the next few months. What we feared is happening, both in West Bengal and in Kerala. Both states saw significant events last month. In Kerala, the Hema Committee report came out. It exposed sexual abuse in the Malayalam film industry. In West Bengal, the brutal rape and murder of a doctor, that too inside a government hospital. Both events raised the same questions. Why are women unsafe at their workplace? What can we do to make it better? Both events also triggered massive outrage. In Kolkata, we have seen public protests. Today, hundreds of junior doctors gathered in the city. They had one demand: the Kolkata Police Commissioner must resign. There is logic to their demand. Kolkata police are facing a lot of questions. They acted very slowly after the murder. It took them 14 hours to file an FIR. Plus, the culprit was a civic volunteer. He was using a Kolkata police bike on the day of the murder. So the criticism is justified. Of course, the state police is not investigating the case anymore. The CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation, is doing that. And they are building a case against the main suspect, the civic volunteer Sanjay Roy. He plans to plead innocent in court. His lawyer says Roy is being framed. Meanwhile, the CBI is also probing a second case, that of corruption at the RG Kar Medical College. At the center of it is the ex-principal. He is accused of running a mafia inside the college. Today, he was arrested by the CBI, and rumor is that he has political patronage. A new audio clip is doing the rounds. It features a conversation between a junior doctor and this ex-principal's aide. The aide name drops the chief minister in this audio. He uses political links to threaten the junior doctor. Now, we've not been able to verify the audio. The principal's aide says it is doctored. So that's where the Kolkata case is at. The accused will plead not guilty, and the CBI is probing corruption. Which brings us to Kerala. Top actors have been forced to break their silence, including Mohanlal and Mammootty. Remember, Mohanlal was the chief of the Artists' Union. He resigned after the Hema Committee report was published. Reports say he was part of a power group, a group that basically ran the industry and shielded predators. But Mohanlal has denied all of it. He welcomed the report's findings, and he also said a cleanup is necessary. Don't buy it, though. The very same Mohanlal called Me Too a fad in 2018. So his statements clearly don't mean very much. Meanwhile, the politics continues. A female Congress leader in Kerala made some damning revelations. She said a casting couch exists in the party, in the Congress party. A casting couch exists. If you're close to top male leaders, you get opportunities. If not, your career goes nowhere. In response, she has been removed from the Congress. The party says she's working with adversaries. And who is that? Who are these adversaries? Kerala's ruling Communist Party. Fun fact about them. One of their lawmakers is accused of rape. Actor turned MLA Mukesh. He's been booked for rape by the Kerala police. But the Communist Party has not asked him to resign. It probably sums up the situation in Kerala and West Bengal. Days of outrage, days of street protests, all of it drowned by the political games. And this has always been India's problem. We've never been short on outrage. We hit the streets, we scream from TV studios, we hold candlelight marches, but then the politicians roll in and we get distracted. We don't know how to convert outrage into meaningful action. Just look at West Bengal. Tomorrow, the government will introduce a new law, death penalty for convicted rapists. The hope is it will stop future crimes. But guess what? The crimes are already happening. 2 assault cases have been reported in West Bengal, both at hospitals. On Saturday, a 13-year-old girl was molested in Howrah. The same day, a nurse was assaulted in Birbhum. Do you think these criminals care about the law or the quantum of punishment? They have probably seen the protests and outrage in Kolkata, yet they did not think twice before doing what they did. So let's get one thing clear here. Outrage alone will not solve this problem, nor will cosmetic political moves. We need to channel that outrage into meaningful solutions. If not, another turning point may slip away from us. Espionage has two rules: don't talk about what you do and don't look like a spy. So who better to go undercover than animals? And no one knows this like Vladimir. I'm not talking about the Russian president Vladimir, who too was a spy. I'm talking about a beluga whale called Vladimir, who was believed to be a Russian spy. The whale became a bit of a celebrity over the years, and now he has died. We'll tell you all about him and answer your burning questions about wild sleuths that roam among us. Who are they? How are they trained? And do they have cool gadgets? Here's a report.
The name's whale, beluga whale, with a license to krill, pardon the pun, and an even cooler nickname, Vladimir. If this reminds you of a certain world leader's name, you aren't wrong, and we'll tell you why. But first, what's going on with Vladimir? He has died. That's unfortunate, but why is the death of a whale making the news? Because this is possibly the world's most famous whale, and it had a cooler job than most of us ever will. Vladimir is world-renowned for being a spy. This is the assumption, at least. No one has any proof. Guess Vladimir did its job a little too well. He was over 4 meters long and weighed about 1,200 kgs. Kind of hard to miss. He was first spotted in Norwegian waters 5 years ago. This was strange for 2 reasons. First, belugas are rarely seen in such busy waters this far south of the high Arctic. And second, the whale was spotted wearing a harness with a GoPro camera attached to it. And the harness said, "Equipment of St. Petersburg." This raised suspicions. People wondered if the whale was on a Russian reconnaissance mission. Russia has never answered the rumors or claimed ownership of the whale. But if the whale was a spy, he was an exceptionally friendly one. The whale was comfortable around people. He responded to hand signals. He showed signs of domestication, and he captured people's imagination almost instantly. That's where he got the nickname, Vladimir. Val is the Norwegian word for whale, merged with what sounds like Vladimir, from the Russian president's name, Vladimir Putin. But now, Vladimir is dead, and no one knows why. But animal rights groups are demanding answers, because Vladimir died at the age of 15. That's relatively young for a beluga whale, whose lifespan can reach 60 years. But it's certain that Russia won't be coming forward with any answers. Multiple sources have cited evidence of Russian programs training animals as spies, but Moscow has repeatedly denied these reports. This is not the first time animals have been used to spy. Just this year, a pigeon was captured in India over accusations of spying for China. The pigeon refused to spill the beans. It didn't utter a word, obviously. Eventually, it was released after being held for 8 months. It's not the only wily animal detained over suspicions of espionage. In 2011, Sudan captured an unlikely Mossad agent, a vulture. It apparently had a GPS tracker and wore tags from Tel Aviv. In 2007, Iran arrested 14 spies, all of them squirrels. Being a spy is a tough enough job as is. The first days are often the hardest. In the 1960s, the US intelligence agency, the CIA, spent $14 million training purring sleuths. The idea was to use cats to pick up Russian intelligence. But it went bust on day one itself, when a cat was run over by a car outside the Soviet embassy in Washington. Occupational hazard, it seems. But despite this, wild sleuths will always be widely used. Because no one follows the first rule of spying like they do. They don't look like a spy.
For our next story, let me ask you some questions. Have you ever tried booking a flight a day before? or booking an Uber at peak traffic hour, or even booking a hotel just hours ahead of check-in. If you have, then kudos to you. You went where others fear to tread. And that's because of exorbitant prices. Last-minute bookings cost a bomb. Reason? Dynamic pricing. And what's that? Imagine you have a product, say a flight ticket. The airline is the seller, but it doesn't set a fixed price for the ticket. The price depends on the demand. If the demand is high, the price goes up. If the demand is low, if the flight is going empty, you can snag the ticket for cheap. It's your basic demand and supply principle. High demand, high prices, low demand, low prices. And it is applicable for a range of things, like hotel rooms, ride-hailing apps, concert tickets, movie tickets, train seats. Anything and everything can be dynamically priced. But why is it done? Well, the United Kingdom, for one, is asking it. Last week, British band Oasis announced a reunion. The boy band will reunite next year. It is scheduled to play 17 shows, and tickets for those shows went on sale. One ticket was initially priced at £148. One ticket for £148, so fans joined the queue online to buy these tickets. But once they reached the checkout, they were in for a rude shock. The tickets had been rebranded. Why? Because of the growing demand. They were now selling for £355 a ticket. So more than 100% markup. And this hasn't gone down well with Oasis fans, also with the British government, where Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy has slammed the inflated prices. The government is launching an investigation into the pricing of tickets. And this has triggered a debate on the practice of dynamic pricing. Is it good or bad? Is it fleecing people or just pure economics? Let's look at the pros first. Dynamic pricing focuses on one principle, the free market. Market forces determine the price of goods. If the demand is high, the charges are more. If it is lower, prices drop to attract more customers. It helps companies pad their margins, manage the inventory, and align better with the market. Take travel, for example. It's a volatile industry. So hotels and airlines must adjust prices to meet the demand. They can use dynamic pricing to optimize their revenue. But there's a catch. In concept, dynamic pricing works both ways, meaning prices can go higher or lower. But in practice, they seem to go only one way, and that is higher. Or we only notice when prices surge. For example, try booking a flight in off-season. Chances are the prices are lower than usual. But we take that as granted. Human psyche associates dynamic pricing to surge pricing only. And that puts off customers. Plus, there's a nagging question. Who determines this demand? What are the metrics used to measure it? Why is there no transparency in the process? And that is what makes customers doubt the process. They feel that the entire process is manipulative, that it's a scam to fleece them. Take Wendy's, for example. It recently introduced dynamic pricing. If there were more people in a store, they would pay more for a burger. That's what they introduced. But people were furious. They threatened to boycott the chain, so Wendy's took it back. Then there's PVR Inox. They too have dynamic pricing for movie tickets. The idea is to increase footfall, but customers complain of high prices, which is why we need regulation. These are just two examples. A lot of companies do it. We need regulation because what if companies are increasing prices just for the sake of it? Say you order food. The company says the demand is high, so you pay for surge pricing. But where's the proof? How do you actually know that there is more traffic? Who regulates that? So we need mechanisms in place to monitor the extent and practice of dynamic pricing. So to sum it up, dynamic pricing can be a useful tool. On paper, it even sounds fair, but the problem is the way it's implemented. Customers always feel that they're losing out. What we need is more transparency from companies and a better understanding of how it works for customers. Tell us what you think. What was God doing before he created the world? Back in the 4th century, philosopher Augustine of Hippo asked this question, and then he answered it himself. He said, before God created the world, there was no time. There was no before. The question is invalid. When it comes to the universe, you could repeat the same annoying process and ask, what came before the Big Bang? And most astronomers would say nothing. Time, space, matter, they all began with a sudden explosion, what we call the Big Bang. But a new study is challenging this theory. It says there was a secret life before the bang. Our next report tells you more.
The big yarn, the big scam, or the big sham. Ignore us. We're coming up with alternate lingo for the theory that has so far told us how the universe began. We're talking about the Big Bang Theory. That's what astronomers say birthed the universe. They say it all started with a single point about 14 billion years ago. The universe was trapped inside a bubble, just hot, tiny particles mixed with light and energy. All of this thousands of times smaller than a pinhead. It was super cramped, so the bubble was dense and hot. Doesn't sound very healthy. So, like most people in toxic relationships, the universe was in desperate need for space. Within a fraction of a second, it suddenly exploded. This is called the Big Bang, and the universe we know today was born. And it began growing, stretching in all directions. Tiny particles came together to form atoms. Then more atoms came together. And we got stars, planets, asteroids, galaxies, and even black holes. The universe grew at a rapid rate, and it never stopped. Billions of years later, it's still expanding. That's quite the growth spurt. But what if none of this is true? After all, the Big Bang is just a theory. There's no proof. So what if the Big Bang was not the birth of the universe? What if there was life before the Big Bang? This is what a new study says, that our universe may have had a secret life before the Big Bang. According to the study, black holes already existed. They contracted to form the little bubble that eventually exploded. So technically, atoms existed even before the Big Bang. But it's not alone in coming up with the theory. In modern astronomy, many scientists have said something similar. They say the Big Bang was not a birth but a transition phase. They call this theory the Big Crunch. Let's explain. Have you heard of a soufflé? Normally, it's cool and small, but if you heat it up as you should, it expands. Eventually, the soufflé cools and then it collapses. Now imagine that the soufflé is our universe. The Big Crunch says something similar happens to our universe. It's expanding now, but thanks to gravity, one day everything will begin to contract. It will fall inwards and collapse, much like a fallen soufflé. Now, no one is going to like a collapsing universe. This will spell the doom of everything. Every galaxy, every planet, every ex-boyfriend's t-shirt you still cherish, every comic you hold dear. All of it gone. And the universe will turn into a super hot, super dense bubble awaiting its next Big Bang. So these are the two camps, the Big Bang and the Big Crunch. This is kind of like Team Edward versus Team Jacob, if you know what we mean, but scientists have picked their favorite theory. So far, no one has any proof. But for ordinary souls like us, do you know the best part? It will be billions of years before the soufflé will collapse, if at all.
It's been a tough couple of days for Vadodara, a city in Gujarat. Heavy rains have left most of it flooded, or had left it flooded, and along with the water came new visitors. Crocodiles. You see, Vadodara is home to the Vishwamitri River, a croc-infested water body. When the river flooded, the crocs were swept into the city. At least 25 of them have been rescued. One crocodile was carried away on a scooter. It tells you how bad the Uber situation is. But seriously, the internet is filled with croc memes, many of them courtesy residents of Vadodara. We've seen Bollywood croc memes, scooter croc memes, and dancing croc memes. The situation has improved in the city and across the state. The waters have started receding, but even amid this crisis, residents retain their sense of humor.
belalang kupu-kupu. Taprak biar rame kalau malam minum cucu. Hooray!
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Russian President Vladimir Putin gets a grand welcome in Mongolia as he lands for a two-day state visit. New images show the scale of Titanic's decay as its wreckage rests on the ocean floor. And floats covered in flowers take part in the annual parade through a Dutch town. We're finally taking you back in history. On this day in 1666, the Great Fire of London broke out. It started at the house of the King's baker. Soon the fire engulfed a large part of the city. It lasted for 4 days, burning down more than 13,000 houses. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.